At 6, Lin's world was uprooted as his father rushed him to flee what was becoming communist China. At 16, he was left to start over in a new country with just $600. But what he built from there is extraordinary. This is the Your Next Success podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Carolyn Sagal. I am a life-first career coach and strategist on a mission to normalize questioning your career, because I believe each of us is made on purpose for a purpose only we can fulfill. The longer we live out of alignment with who we are, what we do best, and why we are here, the more we miss out, and the more the world misses out on what only we can give. The Your Next Success podcast is where we explore how to build a career that truly fuels your life. We talk about self-discovery, smart job search strategies, professional growth, and you will hear stories from people who have navigated big career transitions themselves, so you can create a life-first career and become your own version of authentic success. My guest today is Lin Wu, author of Destination Silicon Valley, From Broom Shop to Supercomputer. Lin worked his way through school, studied engineering, went on to help build some of the fastest computers of the early Silicon Valley era. Later, he founded a company that was acquired by Toshiba and navigated multiple reinventions, including 4 retirements. In this episode, you'll hear Lin's story, beginning with his childhood shaped by sudden displacement and continuing through decades of rebuilding, discipline, and deliberate decision-making on his way to his authentic success. We follow Lin's path through engineering school, early industry roles, Silicon Valley startups, leadership transitions, and repeated reinvention. We also explore how he approached planning across seasons of life, why he chose industry over academia, how he moved from technical work into management, and how retirement became something he entered, exited, and redefined multiple times. This is a conversation about building a life through focus, endurance, and clear-eyed choices. Welcome, Lin, to Your Next Success. I'm so very excited to be speaking with you today.
Thank you. I'm happy to participate. I've been looking forward to this as well.
Awesome. Well, we are going to get into a lot of the amazing things about your journey. You've written this awesome book. I devoured it over the weekend, and I'm so excited that you have documented a lot of your story. It says Destination Silicon Valley, From Broom Shop to Supercomputer. So we're going to get into all this amazing parts of the conversation, and I'm just thrilled that you shared your story with such detail. I've got lots of questions, and I'm looking forward to hearing even more about it.
That sounds good.
Okay, so let's go way back at the very beginning. Tell us, where were you born? Where did you first start out in life, and how was that for you?
Well, I was born in Beijing. That's the capital city of China. I was born in 1942. In 1949, the communists come in, and we were considered to be wealthy people. My father was a very famous doctor. He was the first man that brought X-ray to China, and that really helped him to get his business going. And he saw so many patients with tuberculosis. He helped them, and he grew the business. So he actually owned 2 hospitals, one in Beijing, one in Tianjin. And it was at that time, I was about 6 to 7 years old when the communists start coming in from Manchuria, and they're going to be coming into Beijing just within days. My father one day just decided that it's time that he takes me away and run away from the attack of the Communist Liberation Army. So he took me and his youngest wife, who is the number 3 wife, and I was born by number 2 wife. So my own mother did not get to come out. My dad took me and the youngest wife to Taiwan. I was in Taiwan for about 10 years until I was 16. So that was what was happening. And all that happened so quickly when I left Beijing. I had no idea where we're going, what's going to happen, whether I'm going to ever see my mother again. And as it turned out, I lost track of her communication for 29 years.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so but pre 6 years old, before you left, what was your life like?
I was this young kid, but I was, doing well. But then I had asthma. The northern wind in China was very severe, and my asthma was very serious. Since my father was a doctor, so he moved me into a obsolete operating room so that it has the right air filter and temperature and everything. I stayed there for about 9 months, uh, like a long-term patient. I could not come out of the room because I would wheeze when I come out. So I
Oh,
was
wow.
seriously under asthma attack. And then when my dad decided to take me out of there to leave, I still had asthma with me. So everything has to be very, very careful. I can't stand any cold weather or any rigorous movement.
Wow.
I was a
So
pretty
that
sick child.
when you were in that operating room that had been converted into being your room, and you're not allowed to leave the room, but what did you do? Were you just in the room by yourself, or
No,
did people?
we actually, my dad actually had a male nurse who
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
take care of me. He basically lived with me 24 hours a day. Mr.
Oh, wow.
Wong, he was
Yeah.
probably in his late 20s. And he took care of me. And at that time, I'm most interested in listening to books. Sometimes I learn how to read a little bit, but I don't read very well yet. So he reads lots and lots of novels to me, and I was
Oh,
fascinated with it. I always asked him to read me more.
interesting. What kind of stories did you like the best?
Well, it's mostly about a Chinese kung fu master, about
Nice.
what they do, different kind of parties fighting with each other, and all the intricate stories between them. So I
Very
was
interesting.
fascinated about them.
And I wonder, even at that age, did you ever think you're going to write your own book of your own story?
No way.
Okay, so then all of a sudden you just are told that you're leaving?
Well, just this one morning in January, it was probably sub-zero temperature, so cold. Beijing is kind of like Montreal in Canada. It's so cold. And my dad just came into the room one day and he says, he called my full name, Lin. It's time to get up. I'm going to take you away. We're going to the airport. He told Mr. Wong, he says, he called him Wong, dress Chunlin warmly and cover his mouth and give him this warm leather hat. And we're going to go to the airport. So that's what happened. And so I didn't know where we're going. And Mr. Wong dressed me. And then Mr. Wong carried me to a chauffeur car, was waiting
Oh,
for us outside. And then my dad sit next to me. And then we finally went pick up a couple more people. One of them was my third mother, the
yeah.
youngest mother. She was very, very young. She was a nurse, training nurse in the hospital. She was very beautiful. And then my dad fell in love with her. So he decided that he wanted to take the youngest wife and the youngest son. Son is more important in the family. And I was young because, it's easier for me to adapt to what's going on. So
Oh,
the two of us, and then they also brought another young girl, sort of like being my companion. She was 2 years older than me. Her name was Ru Xiu. So the three of us, um, went with my dad, and that was my new family. But I didn't realize that until I was on the road after a while. Then when I
yeah.
finally figured out, well, this is going to be my family, probably for a long time. Uh,
Wow.
and of course, I was still scared.
Absolutely. And now, had you ever been on an airplane before?
No, it was a military airplane. It was gray, and they don't have that much accommodations in there. Just seats there in two rows. They strap you in and then take off. It was the old propeller.
And was it bumpy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was bumpy, but I
Yeah,
was
bumpy and
I
loud.
wasn't
Yeah.
that great.
Wow. Okay. And so when did it sink in that you weren't going back?
Well, slowly as we go along, we went to one city, which is Qingdao. It's about 2 hours flight from Beijing, near the seaport. And then we stayed there for about a month, and we went to Shanghai. We stayed there for a couple more months, and finally we went to Taiwan, which is really our destination, because Taiwan is an island. Once you're there, it's very hard for a communist to attack. So the
Uh-huh.
nationalists all went to Taiwan, and the rich people all went to Taiwan. The highly educated people also went there. So I think somewhere along the way, I kind of figured out this is my new family. I never asked my dad. Said that it was in my family tradition that you just don't ask. You do whatever your parents tell you. So I never really asked him what's going on. I kind of figure out slowly that this is my new mother, this is my new sister, and that's it.
Yeah, and okay, so then in Taiwan, how was that as far as like what did you get to have fun or was it just only studying? What happened there?
Well, so I had asthma, so I start attending first grade, but after a month, I had to quit because my asthma was still very serious. Then I went back again. Second grade, I didn't make it either. So I was basically disabled until about the third grade. And then I started going back to elementary school, and my asthma slowly was getting better. Taiwan is a much warmer place. It's an island in the subtropical area, so it was very pleasant. And asthma, breathing is easier. We don't have big winters, so by the time I got to fifth grade, um, I was start developing into puberty, and my asthma seemed to be getting behind me. So I started playing ping pong and start playing basketball. And so by the time I got to sixth grade, I was a pretty good athlete in terms of playing balls, basketball. So I was a pretty healthy. Then we have to take a national exam across Taiwan, trying to figure out what's the best school you can get into. And I was kind of self-studying quite a bit also, and I got into the finest public high school. It's really a junior high, and then move us into senior high. So from seventh grade on, it was probably the golden years of my life. I loved the school. I loved the sports, and I even participated in a 800-meter race for all school, ninth grade, and I end up winning the top prize. So
Yeah.
I become an athlete. It was from asthma boy to being an athlete. That was quite a story.
And it was like you observed. This is so fascinating about you. So you realize that you're kind of growing out of asthma and then you just decided you wanted to try this race, try this new thing out. You observed some of the other people running and then you just kept doing it. I think you talked about different practice times people like to do and then when you did it, but tell a little bit more about that because
Well,
there are
so
just so many fascinating parts of your memoir.
so we have kind of a very special coach. He teaches running, and he go and pick out the kids in the school and make them the track team. And one of the kids, his name is Little Bear. He's a very tall kid, and his brother was a basketball star in the school. So they're all traditionally athletes. And I wasn't thinking about running at all. I was just playing basketball all the time. But because I played a lot of basketball, I think I'm in pretty good condition. So I kind of said maybe I should try to run. So then I watched Little Bear, how he practices. He had no idea I was watching because I was not part of the team. And
Yeah.
then at night, I would go and buy some track shoes. I go to the athletic field. I would start trying to do some running and practice. I do that every night, about 2 months before the track meet. And finally, the meet came. He was clearly the favorite, heavy bets was on him. And there's a whole bunch of kids were all running. I just kind of followed him. And then I decided if I can just follow him to the end, I will at least get a number two. So, but then in the end, I just start taking off and I beat him right to the line. So everybody in the school was shocked. So am I. That was what happened.
Maybe that was one of the first times that you realized I can set a goal, I can be curious and see how it goes. And if so long as I keep going, I will win.
Well, I guess that got into my bloodstream that I was pretty competitive. I didn't know until at that point. After that, I was into a lot of sports. School was important, but I was living a pretty balanced life. I was into sports. I went to writing. I went to a lot of extracurricular activities. I was also into broadcasting.
Oh, that's cool. And then what happened?
Well, when I was 16, one day my dad just talked to me. He says, it's time I'm going to bring you to the United States. So I had no idea that was going to happen. And my dad's always, he make a decision, you want to make it happen right away. He doesn't really tell anybody else. So he says, you're going to leave in 3 days. I already got the tickets here. I'm going to bring you to USA. Have E, my number 3 mother, I call her E, help you to pack. Make it simple. You can only just bring a small suitcase. We're going to leave in 3 days. So I was really shocked because at that time I was a teenager. I have a lot of friends. I have 3 other boys who are very, very close, knitted with me as a group. And my dad told me not to tell anyone. He said, you will go to the school officials and tell them that you're quitting school, withdrawal. And then, but I secretly went to my 3 friends and I told them that I'm leaving for the United States. And they were all very sad, but they kind of recovered a little bit. And one of them said, well, when you go, make sure you write to us. We want to see that in Chinese. And then you put the stamp on there. So we know we get a letter from you, it will be stamped already from USA. Those stamps are very rare. And now the kid says, well, after 2 years, you're going to have an American girlfriend. And, and we want to see if you can prove it. So we take a picture with her holding her hands. Picture. So that was the last thing I remember that I laughed in tears with my friends.
Did you send them letters? Did you ever get that opportunity?
Yeah, we keep track of each other quite a bit. And later on, one of the 3 actually came to USA many, many years later, like 20 years later,
Oh,
and
wow.
stayed in my house for 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And
Cool.
I saw a second one as well later on in Taiwan. But when you really keep up all the time, it's kind of lost track of each other after so many years.
I mean, it wasn't as easy, but still, it's amazing that you were able to keep up with some of those formative friendships. Okay, so you're told you're going to go to the US, and now your dad had gone to school here?
Yeah, he actually has a master's degree. Well, he has an MD in China and then got his master's degree later on at University of Chicago. And then he also went to Switzerland, Zurich. He was
Oh, wow.
educated in a medical school over there for postgraduate. So he's all over the world. And he speaks several languages fluently. German, English, Japanese, and Chinese fluently.
Wow.
So he just brought me to LA. And, when I first got over here, I couldn't believe how clean the streets are. How it's just all cars. There's no bicycles, no pets,
Yes.
no nothing, just automobiles. And I love it. And but then about a week later, my dad took me to see a guardian, Dr. Nelson. She's both friends from we attended WHO, World Health Organization. I don't think they know each other well, but my dad did get them to agree that they be my guardian. So then my dad just led me there with Dr. Nelson and his wife, Dorothy. And he left and he gave me $600 in US dollars, six $100 bill. He says, this is for you to spend. I did not know that was the last money I'm going to receive. He did not tell me anything. So from that point on, it's the start of my journey in America. And
Yeah.
I really started my memoir from that day on. Then I went back and I write all the rest because
Oh.
a lot of people read my stuff. They said, well, I want to know what happened in the past. So I did that. But my journey really started. The exciting part was when I arrived in the United States at 16. I was an immigrant. I really ended up with no money, no family, no friends, no language. But it worked out okay.
Well, it did. It really did. But I think that's, I don't know, perseverance, luck. I mean, in one part, you say you thought maybe some of this stuff was predestined. You just had to be open to the opportunity. But it was fascinating, right? Because I think I recall Mrs. Nelson was a Seventh day Adventist, very religious, and then they didn't eat meat also. So you're in a new country, new culture, new food, and that change was significant for you, but then somehow she had connections at a high school that was also run by the Seventh day Adventists. So tell a little bit more about that part of your story.
So when I got to Los Angeles, Mrs. Nelson was a wonderful lady. She started teaching me English, and I started working in the summer, getting a summer job. I had no idea what working was like. I always know how to study, but I didn't know how to work. Dr. Nelson found me a job to be a dishwasher, and I did that job, and I survived, saved a little money. Then in September, they put me into a Seventh-day Adventist school. It's called the Newberg Park Academy. It was in just a little bit south of Los Angeles in the San Fernando Valley. It's a beautiful school. We have 500 acres of land.
Oh,
We
wow.
have a farm and a poultry, and there's like 500 kids there. It's a boarding school, boys and girls. So they took me there, and then quickly they let me there. Basically, nobody said I was really on my own, but I guess turned out I was. Um, Within a month or two, my money was running out because the school charged me $200 per month for the tuition, room and board. And I thought maybe after I pay a month or two, my dad would send more money. He never did send me money. And I thought maybe Doc Nelson would help me with connecting with my dad. They never called me and tell me anything. I was afraid to ask. I was a little embarrassed to ask. Maybe that's more it. And so I had to figure out what to do. I do have a kind of a part-time job, clean the bathroom and the chapel and all that stuff. But they only pay 50 cents an hour. I figure out I need to make $2 an hour working 20, 30 hours a week to make ends meet. Otherwise, I wouldn't run out of money. There's nothing in the school that would pay that much. So I wander around and around and finally find out there's a broom shop. That's why the name of my memoir. There was a broom shop that's basically they only hire grown-up people. Turned out they were all illegal immigrants from Mexico. Mexicans come in, men in their 25, 30 range, big guys. They work in the broom shop. They make brooms. So finally, I got myself into the broom shop and navigating myself from the beginning as a person who watched the corn and dyed the corn, and finally ended up as a broom stitcher. That paid by peacetime, which means It depends how many brooms I make instead of by the hour. So I was able to become a very skillful broom stitcher. On the letter, every week they post like how many broom you stitch, where you are in the letter. I finally made number 3 out of like 20 stitchers, and I
Oh,
was
wow.
making $2 an hour. So by then, I know I was home free because I could afford everything for the tuition, room and board, and I could just get to high school. So that was kind of the struggle phase.
It's amazing though, because and you also had to end up taking classes that were not only in a foreign language, but foreign concepts, right? Because you had talked, the math came easy to you because you had already had so much schooling, so much math, but English was a different language. And then religion class, since it was part of this Seventh day Adventist, but this was all new for you. So I'm curious, did your family have a faith tradition in China and in Taiwan? Like, how different was this Seventh day Adventist experience for you?
My dad did not have any religion. He would go to the temple once or twice a year. We worship our ancestors during New Year time, but basically it's more of a tradition rather than a religion.
Uh-huh.
So we were pretty non-religious. So New Valley Park, Seventh Adventist was a very new experience. It was in fact shocking. Our Sabbath is from Friday evening to Saturday evening. In that 24 hours, in my memoir, I stated there were 7 worship different things.
Yeah.
You go to the seminar, you go to the big open worship hour and all that. There's 7 different things. Basically, we were just overwhelmed. Well, I was overwhelmed with religious activities. And then we also, of course, have to take a lot of religious classes. We cannot dance. We do roller skates. We cannot see movies. We have to eat vegetarian food. So they're just very different than what I was used to. So when I graduated, I decided that, I don't really want to stay in the Seventh Adventist track. If I want to be in medicine, I could go to Loma Linda eventually. But I decided I always wanted to go to Princeton. So I decided I need to get become a bigger fish in a bigger ocean. Just leave the Seventh Adventist environment. It's too narrow.
How did Princeton come on your radar?
Oh, actually, it was sort of like a dream because when we were in Taiwan, I was in a really good school. All the kids talk about going to university and then eventually come to graduate school at the Ivy League school. So the top ones were Harvard, Yale, Princeton. Then I studied a little bit on my own. I love the location of Princeton. It's in New Jersey. It's in the country, and they're surrounded by forests. They have beautiful highways, and I was teaching there. Have a great science school. So it's just like a dream if I could attend Princeton. So I just kind of decided I want to go there. Of course, I never made it there.
And then how did you decide, because you applied to another school as well? So how did that other school come on your radar?
I really didn't have any choices because when I graduated from New York Park Academy, there's no counselor or advisor helped me to apply to a college. All they said was, you can go to the Seventh Adventist track. There were 3, La Sierra College, Pacific Union College, and Walla Walla College. They're all in the West Coast. If I don't want to go there, nobody talks to me. It was kind of sad that nobody really advised me about my career opportunity or school. So I did all that by myself. But then I had Princeton, I applied, didn't make it. And then my dad's friend told me there's another school called Drexel. They're in Philadelphia. It's a kind of a second tier technical college. I figured maybe I have a better shot at it. So it was the only college I applied, and they took me. So that was what happened.
And not only did they take you, they gave you a full scholarship.
Yeah, they did. They gave
Yeah.
me a full scholarship. I actually graduated pretty good in Newberry Park. I think I was on the top 15% or something out of 100 kids. So they gave me a scholarship, and I went to Drexel. The reason I went there is it's a co-op program. Instead
Yep.
of college for 4 years, it's 5 years. So I would study 6 months and go to work in the industry for 6 months. So that would allow me to make money while I work for the industry to come back for this, pay for the school. That when we're in school, we don't have to work as much. That seemed like a really reasonable thing for me. So I applied to Drexel. They took me. So that's how I got in.
Yeah, and it was amazing. And then the full scholarship, of course, you found didn't pay for the rooming, didn't pay for books. So then all of a sudden you're having to take this broom shop money that you had earned and start applying it right away. But then even when you got your co-op job, you're quite fortunate because you ended up working for Kodak at the time, right? And so you had such a fascinating experience to get to see inside some of the largest companies of how they work. But tell a little bit about your Drexel experience and then the Kodak times.
Well, at Drexel, like we first year we were freshmen, we just studied. Of course, I didn't have enough money, so I ended up working as a waiter in the girls' dormitory, waiting on girls' tables. There's a very beautiful girls' dormitory, so the girls live there. The room and board. So I applied for a job there just to be a waiter, and they took me. So we would serve the girls their breakfast and dinner. And in lieu of that, we get two big meals. We get to eat breakfast and dinner. It was just delicious because I living in New York Park, I was vegetarian for so many years. When I got over there, I can smell the food. I can smell the roast chicken, the turkey, and it was just such a wonderful time. Working was nothing. I mean, it's easy to serve the girls. So I learned that very quickly. So year two, we start going to an industry. Most of my friends are going to RCA, General Electric, or Westinghouse within 20 miles. But I was not a citizen. And you cannot go to those electronic companies that have a lot of security clearance situations. So the dean of the school decided to send me to Kodak. He asked me whether I want to go to Kodak. It's 400 miles away. I said, well, I come 3,000 miles from the West Coast and 10,000 miles from China. Of course, 400 miles is nothing. So
Yeah.
I ended up in Kodak. And it was an eye opener to that. Kodak at the time was, Fortune 500, probably top 100. They have 50 big buildings. They have a railroad going in there connected to the Lake Erie. And they have underground paper pulp factories there. The whole building's underground is basement. It's all full of paper pulps. It's so huge. It's like inside of an Olympic swimming pool. And I was just fascinated by what's going on. So I was lucky to work for Kodak.
And then tell a little bit about the job that you had there.
The job was pretty simple, just help the engineers to do experiment in the dark room, printing, duplicating. Later on, I got into a job and we're trying to compete with Xerox, but using Kodak's wet chemistry, it never worked. A lot of the Xerox stuff were done by laser later on. So Kodak was a kind of wet chemistry. It just did not compete. But we were kind of bullheaded and they really want to compete. So they used me as like a technician doing all the experiment in the dark room. I didn't learn very much, but in the evenings, I had a lot of time. So we have a Kodak Works that do the camera. So I learned a lot about photography on my own. It's kind of an employee benefit. I went to take classes and then I bought cameras there. I took a lot of pictures. Then I learned how to make movies. So that became very interesting.
And a fun hobby too, right?
for the rest of my life. Yeah.
Yeah, and that served you well a couple years after that, if I recall, to have that experience of photography, the experience of movies. Okay, so you're at Kodak for your co-op, and then you come back. I think you had two co-op times there at Kodak.
Yes. 2 6 months.
Yeah, and then you decided to leave Drexel and go somewhere else. How did that thought even come into your universe?
Well, Drexel was kind of I hate to use this word, but kind of like a second tier mid Atlantic school. All the kids are around the East Coast, from New York down to maybe Maryland. It's not international, so it doesn't have the reputation like an Ivy League school. I still want to go to Princeton. I didn't get into Princeton, but third year I decided I should try something else. And my dad was coming back to the United States. He actually was in New York again. So I said maybe I should try this other Ivy League school. It's called Columbia University. It was everything. Columbia was everything Princeton is not. It's in the middle of the city. It's in Manhattan. The campus is right next to Harlem. It was just lots of building there. Although the campus itself was quite nice. So I tried it. But by then, my grades were very, very good. I had a very good study mate, Steve. He and I studied together, and we were really, really good partners. So we were like close. He was almost like the top of the class, number 3 or number 5 out of 800 kids. And I was probably number 25. So by then, my grades were so high. I walked in Columbia and they interviewed me. They took me right away. And they gave me another scholarship. So after third year, I transferred to Columbia. I finished there. And then I went on to get a master's degree as well.
Mm.
Stayed in Columbia.
And along the way, I think you ended up, well, wait, was it at Kodak that you got a car? Somewhere you got a car from somewhere.
I got my first car in Kodak. It was my first year there. I've always wanted to buy a car. Okay, I mean, all the young kids, you want to have your own car. So I was probably 19. I got paid after the first month. I figured out that I need to put away so much money for tuition, but whatever money is left, which isn't a lot, I said I could just go ahead and learn how to drive a car. So I decided to go into Yellow Page and find out private teachers. We don't have high school education at that time to teach you how to drive, so
Yeah.
do my own. So I hired myself a coach. So I met Mr. Fan, and he had an old Buick. So he says, I'll teach you for 6 hours. I believe you will get a license. So every Saturday afterwards, I would go meet him in downtown Rochester, and he would teach me how to drive. So after 6 hours, he said, you are ready. So I went to take the test, and I passed. So I said, well, maybe it's time I should get a car. Well, my class roommate, office mate, approached me quietly. He says, I have a second car, Lin. His name is Joe. He says, if you're interested, I'll show it to you. So he showed to me in the parking lot. It was a 55 Ford. I didn't realize it was a stick shift, but as it turned out, it was. And I didn't learn how to do that. So he drove the car to my apartment. I left there on the street, and he says, okay, here it is. So next day, I tried to drive the car. I couldn't do it because I have stick shift. So I slowly had to learn that on my own, but I did it. So that was my first car.
That's amazing though, to just again, you kind of like made a decision, you research, you find the tools to be able to help you do that, and then you just do it. Maybe kind of like your dad a little bit. You make a decision and now you're just going to go take the action.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, and I forget exactly when it lined up, but you were invited to go to take this like European trip, and they wanted you to be the driver and to take the photographs and some movies of that. When was that time? Is it right around like the Columbia time, right?
Yeah, it's right around when I graduated, when I ended up third year in Drexel, transferring to Columbia. It was that summer before I started in Columbia.
Ah,
I went to New York to meet with my dad, and my stepmother also came to U.S. around that time as well. And they have a friend who lives in Brazil. He was a publisher of the China news, a very big, large publishing company. And he has a son and a daughter that are going to school in Berkeley about my age. So Mr. Yao decided that he wanted to take his family, his wife, two kids, and invite me to join to go to Europe. And he wanted to pay for all the expenses. So it was an opportunity. I had a whole summer free before the school starts. But he had a few things he asked me. He wanted me to help them to drive a car if we need to rent a car because none of them drive. His two kids don't drive. He wanted me to take all the movies and all the slides. At that time, we do a lot of slideshow with the carousel, projection.
yes.
We take a lot of pictures of that for the trip. And he will also ask me to help them to do all the coordination of applying for visas of different countries. Those are three pretty easy jobs. I mean, they're fun jobs, especially the driving. I love to drive. So I accepted right away. But actually, underneath that, I didn't really write in my memoir. He really wanted me, he interested in having me marry his daughter.
Oh, there was another layer
Right.
there.
But
Yeah.
that just didn't happen. Yeah, we
Yeah.
didn't really get along that well. But I won the trip. We had a good time. It was wonderful.
And so then you come back to Columbia and you start there and then what happens?
Well, it's a different ball game. The kids were all international, and they were all kids from the also alumni children. They are very smart. And so I met my competition. They were all very smart. And so I had to study a lot. But fortunately, by then it was mostly engineering classes. There were no, non-science classes. So I did okay. Then I met my future wife, and she became the love of my life. So
Yeah.
and her name was Anne, and she was born in Hong Kong, went to England when she was 12, then comes through from England to US when she was 16, 15. So my dad was a doctor, her mother was a nurse, and then they got together and decided that maybe they should have the children to meet and see if they could introduce us to each other. So I met her, and nothing happened during the first meeting that we met because I was very, very shy, and she was very outgoing. But at that party, there were just a lot of boys that kind of surrounded her. All these boys are from South America, and there were just layers of kids. I was very intimidated. So the date never really happened. We're just all in this big party together. And then a year later, I got a phone call, and it says, I want to invite you to a school ball called the Coronation Ball in New Jersey. She was attending a high school there. I was in Columbia, and I've never been to a ball. I don't know how to dance, but then I remember her as a very, very beautiful girl. So I accepted. Then I had to rent a car. I had to get a corsage. I had to get a tuxedo and shoes and all that. I went over to see her, and she grew up in 1 year. She's just beautiful, and she was very sweet and very intelligent. And after that, I started wanting to see her as much as I can. So that was the beginning of our romance. I
It's
eventually married.
quite beautiful though. And so she was still in high school, you're in college in very tough courses and now and yet you still find a way to be excelling in your classes and making time for your life and to spend time with her.
I didn't have a lot of money at that time either, so I wasn't sure if I could afford a car. So I became a tutor, tutoring kids in Colombia for high school kids. But then I found out that I don't make very much money there either. Uh, but then my dad knew someone who knew the headmaster of the Hewitt School in Manhattan. That's a private girls' school. And they were looking for a tutor to go to the school after school hour and tutor the young girls. They were all girls from like 14, 15, 16-year-old. These were like algebra, geometry, very simple math. And then they asked me if I want to take the job. Somehow I got the job and they were paying large amount of money. So from that, I started making pretty good spending money. So I could afford a car again. I could afford to go to see Anne in New Jersey. So it really worked very well. I was just lucky to have that job.
Well, I think things end up coming in your path and you just seize the opportunity and do them.
They're just coming. Yeah. I
It was
could be turning better and better.
and no, even though a lot of opportunities were coming, still you had some discernment because I believe there was one time where maybe it was your dad, but somebody knew the head of a very large chemical company. Of course, that guy meets you, and then here's the story: people meet you and they want you to work with them, you know. But yet you were discerning because you were thinking, wait a minute. I've been studying all this engineering principles, electrical engineering. If I went and studied chemical at a chemical company, then what am I doing? I don't know that that's what I really want. And so you kind of you have opportunities coming to you, but you also had a little bit of a discerning compass inside that you paid attention to. You didn't just go with what somebody suggested. You found out on your own.
Yeah, you're very perceptive. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Mr. Wishnik was the chairman of Whitco Chemical Company. He's amazing because he lost an arm in the army during the Second World War. He still was able to found the company and become chairman, and the company become $1 billion trading on New York Stock Exchange. He did offer me, he was patient with my dad, and so somehow we got connected. So he invited me to summer intern and then work there. But they're chemical. I'm electrical. They're very different. So
Yep.
I decided to turn them down, even though it was very good opportunity.
Yeah.
Wasn't
But
on my track.
I like that you did that because so many times younger people they don't have a strong enough sense of what they're truly wanting or listening to that internal voice or realizing the kinds of things that are fascinating to them versus the kind of things that they could do but they don't really enjoy and it just sucks a lot of time, effort and energy for no benefit for them or the world. So I liked that you had that discerning voice and you followed that and you made the decisions that were not just the quick one in the moment, but the one for a longer future that you were aiming to find. Okay, and so then Anne becomes significant part of your life. You guys then end up uh, making it so that you're going to be closer to each other, and then you graduated, right? You ended
Yeah, I
up
got my graduate, and I got my master, and I want to start studying to end. I don't want to go to industry. I was really afford. A lot of my colleagues, friends want to go get a PhD. Others have to go to industry.
Yep.
So I decided to go to industry because I just don't want to, be school track and publishing and talking at seminars and all that and doing research. I want to be in the industry, be productive in the commercial world. I also, by then, I decided I really want to go into management track. I will become a manager rather than become an individual contributor.
Imagine what your life would be like if your career aligned with who you are, what you do best, and actually fueled the life you want. At Next Success, we support all ages and stages through career transitions, from students exploring majors or careers to job seekers actively searching or reimagining their next move to professionals committed to self-awareness and leadership growth. Stay connected and explore what's possible at nextsuccesscareers.com and follow Next Success Method on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook.
And some of the things, even in that, you also were realizing about yourself that you wanted to be like close to and working with something that you could like touch tangibly. Like you wanted to do those things too, versus just a concept or testing something somebody else made. So even in that, I was so impressed to be reading, because one of the things that I'm trying to do now is, I help people mid-career later on decide like, who are you? What do you do best? How do you want your life to be? But I also want to be able to go back to those younger ages, the 15 to 18 to 22, 26, and really help people decide with some data, what are your natural abilities? What are your interests? What are your goals? And how can you align? And you were doing that on your own, realizing where some of your fascinations were, where some of your passions were, the things that you really, truly loved, and you were modifying in real time using more information than many people do. So I was just like fascinated and impressed. Okay, so tell about when you chose your industry job, how that came about, and then how you chose, because even that I thought was also quite amazing, because within the company you joined, they gave you choices, and then you made a very educated, informed decision.
Yeah, I think those are very strategical decisions in my life. I was accepted by Bell Lab, which is really a research institution company. They have lots of patents. They probably have the number one patents in the world, but it was all research, writing papers. And the people interviewing me were all PhDs. Um, I feel pretty drawn by their knowledge. On the other hand, I said, do I really want to be one of them? Just publishing research? Not really. And I was interviewed by another aerospace company as well. I didn't like their either. So the other one was IBM. They were kind of the future, the state of the art. The computer was just becoming, to be the thing to do. And so I applied to IBM, and I was accepted. They offered me 4 different jobs to choose. That was really interesting. So I had to choose the right one. I get rid of 2 right away because one was quality, the other was testing. They're not in the main line. I want to be in design, in development. So you develop logic or develop memory circuits. It's just 2 different type of circuits. Couldn't have choose one or the other. I choose the one I thought that has more diversified. You interact with a lot of users. So I took the circuit design group. It turned out that was a good decision for me. And I joined IBM as a circuit designer.
And then as you're there, you start realizing and wondering, because I thought it was interesting, even like your first day of going and seeing like, okay, this is where your office is going to be. You had these fleeting thoughts like, wait, what? Tell a little bit about those thoughts that first came. And then of course you squashed them for a while and just got really busy with your work. But those first thoughts of seeing your office at IBM.
Well, again, I had no idea what industry was like. So when we started the first day, I go in there, I sign in, I get all the education and tutorial about the company. Then I met my boss and he took me to an office. I had a roommate, Mashika Patel from India. It just 2 desks, coat hanger and a couple of cabinets and a chair. And I said, wow, this is going to be terrible for me to spend the rest of my life just look at the walls. But as it turned out, the job was so exciting that I never looked at the wall again, ever. So that was interesting.
But you had this experience of like, man, will I ever get a window? how would I ever get to, have the corner office? How would I ever get to see outside? So even though your work became so fascinating, you didn't think about it again. Still, there was like some seed planted, like, oh, I think what I'd really love is a window or maybe the corner or something to be able to see a little bit more. And then you start also noticing, because IBM's such a huge company and they had very interesting structures, because you explained that they were a vertically integrated company. So I don't know that many people even understand that concept, but help us understand a little bit more, like, what was a vertically integrated company? And then what did you notice about some of these management structures and your thoughts about them?
Vertical integration in the computer industry means that the company wants to produce everything they needed to make their computer valuable, cost effective, and reliable. So they want to make this, the semiconductor, which is the heart of the machine. They might want to make the circuit board. They want to make the frame, the cable, the heater, everything to do with the computer and all the critical components going there. Of course, they won't make the screws or, the small wires, but they make all the so-called critical components that they want to be in control of the quality, of the performance, and then hopefully, if they make enough of it, they control the cost. So IBM would become very ambitious. They said, we want to be vertically integrated, so when our computer goes out into the marketplace, it's the best. It's the best in performance and it's best in quality and will compete in price. And they were dominating in the marketplace. They have 70% of the marketplace over all the rest of the computer companies out there. So when they become vertically integrated, they have a huge volume. The volume could come back and help them to drive the cost down. So they could be afford to be a vertically integrated. Of course, that lasts only 20 years, well, which is a long time. They were very successful as a vertically integrated company. Eventually, IBM has to give up a lot of component division, such as semiconductor.
And then the management structure that you started looking at and realizing, okay, beyond your job of what you were supposed to do, but how that was fitting in and how you were reporting and the efficiencies or the inefficiencies or the way that you thought people were being good managers or where there was room for improvement. Tell a little bit about those things.
In IBM, there were many layers. I think from the bottom layer to the chairman of the board, Tom Watson Jr. in Armonk, it's probably 8 or 9 different layers. You start at the bottom, a junior engineer, then a associate engineer, then engineer, and then advisory engineer and senior engineer, and you get to the management, director, vice president, senior vice president, president, chairman. So there's so many layers in there. It's very ineffective because if you're a layer 5, you cannot kill somebody in layer 4. You can only talk to the layers you're directly reporting to. So, the top one cannot talk to the bottom one. It's very effective. The more better structure is less layers. Each person had more people reporting to them. Of course, there's a maximum you can handle the bandwidth. Maybe one person can manage 10 people, but not 20. So there's some rules there. You have to balance. But in IBM was all vertically integrated. It's all 1 or 2, 2 or 3 kind of thing. So that was not very effective.
You noticed that there were some managers that just kind of shut their door and stayed on their own. And then there were other managers that were bringing in other people to have discussions and communications, but still it was only, like you're saying, it wasn't like you weren't invited to the meetings, but some other people that you were working with very closely were in those meetings. And so it was like you start noticing these things about communication and what's really driving results and driving progress. You're observing these experiences from inside one of the best companies in the world at that time. Okay, so Anne is, kind of progressing along with her school. And then you decide that you guys do want to take it to the next level. So you're getting engaged, and then you're going to get married. And now Anne, my understanding is she comes from a faith tradition of Catholic, being very devout Catholic high school. Had you embraced then a different faith tradition, or now, like, how is that Catholic exposure developed of your own faith tradition and beliefs?
Well, I think I was pretty open. I was so much in love with Anne that I would go to church with her. I would do things that, she wants to do. But also we were getting married. So we had a family right away, and we have a son. So the family become more the center of activities. So religion, I think, activities really took on a back seat. So there were not a lot of conflict. But the wedding itself was very, very challenging because Anne wanted to have a full Catholic nuptial mass. So the people have to kneel down on the floor and up and many times and stand up. And my dad decided that he wants to invite several hundred doctors from the hospitals, and they were all Jewish people. So that didn't mix very well. So we had a lot of discussions and figure out. Finally, we decided, let's put a note on each seat. Tell them that if in your religion you don't feel like to go up and down, if you want to keep sitting, it will be okay. So
Yeah.
that's how the wedding went. So everybody came, and some went through the rituals, others didn't do it. But we still had a full nuptial mass for our wedding.
I love that being inclusive of other people's views and things were part of your foundational union. Okay, so you get married, you end up welcoming your beautiful son newly into your marriage. Your career is booming, and there were a couple times along the way that you mentioned, like, your own father was very busy with working and you didn't get to see him much. There were like pretty rare times that you actually got to spend time with him. And then there was a time one summer you were tutoring somebody else's family, and same thing, you're noticing this dad is very busy with the work, but not having the opportunity to interact much with his children. And I'm curious because it was like those things were noted, and then you were wildly successful at IBM and even some of the other companies that you went on to after that. But like, how did that work out in your own situation with your own children? Was there more of a trying to do both things, or did you find yourself in that same thing of work? You love your children, but you didn't see them very often. How did that work?
Since we have a very small family, we didn't have a big family with just me, myself, and Anne, and our son David. It was very small, and we were very close. We do a lot of things together, and we go picnicking and cook, and we go on trips. We're very, very, very close. So it was, I think, very, very different. As it turned out later on in life, I think my wife basically raised the two kids together. I have a son and a daughter, and she basically spent all her time in the first 10, 15 years just raising the two children, support me and the family. And really, she was also my advisor during my job. A lot of times I had problems, I talked to her. I would get real counseling from her. If I don't make a presentation, I worry about people don't understand it. I would pitch to her first, and she would react to it. She says, I don't understand any of this stuff. Let's try again.
I loved that.
And I would try again. She would just tell me the way it is, So we're very, very close. It's very different than the model of my dad and me, or this other family, they were, I think they're Persian. The father and the children are very far apart. I mean, we take the kids to swim lessons. We go to their concerts. Uh, we go to their plays. So we're pretty much integrated. Of course, my wife is doing a lot more than I do. At one point, I had to work 12 hours a day. At those times, I was basically dedicated to build this fastest computer in the world. Uh, but other than that, in general, over the lifetime, I think we spend a lot of time with our children. We still do. As
That's
much,
amazing.
as much as they want to.
Yes.
When the kids
Now,
grow up, they don't want to be with you as much anymore.
we were talking about Anne a little bit, and it reminded me that I loved one of the first things that you were talking about after you and Anne started becoming an item. And you said, Anne knew how to treat everyone as if they were the most important person in the world. She had a unique talent. I loved that comment. Like, what better compliment could anyone receive than that? And then that stayed throughout your marriage and all of the parties and the hosting and the different skills that she developed along the years. I thought that was just such a beautiful testament to your relationship and to your love.
That's very, very true because she just happened to be a very natural, very warm and an extrovert. And she is good with people. She's very curious about people. She knows how to talk to people and ask questions, get them to feel comfortable. I think that's just a great asset. I don't have nearly as much. I learned that from her. So when we go out together, she's the diplomat. When we go take a cruise on the ship, she's the one that organized parties and funding. And then I have a launch party recently for my book. And she's the one that organized a party for the launch. We actually invited 100 people. And
wow.
instead of just reading my book, she organized the activity to be, there's a reading, there's an introduction, but there's also, we have many, many games in there. One of them she organized was called Trivia, and people just loved it. So I think she's my partner, and she really was, where she was really my true partner in terms of getting along and help with the family and then with my career as well.
And she's quite spectacular because of even like the problem solving as well. Like in your phases of your career where you had to work so many hours, she had a unique solution to get a babysitter to watch the kids while she came and brought dinner and would eat with you and help you with some of the things that you were doing. I mean, even that is like phenomenal and fascinating in the same breath. I don't know how many other people would have even thought to do that. And yet she did, and you can just tell the respect that you have, the love you have, that both of you have really was shining through, even though it wasn't, the main part of the story, but that's definitely an underlying theme that you both were making each other better.
Yeah, absolutely. Those were the days that I was working very, very hard in the company, and I had to go in and after dinner to work until midnight, and I decided that she could just bring dinner, have a babysitter at home, and come and have dinner with me. And I would ask her to help me with some of the counting chips, which one's bad, which is good, tapping test results, just so we can be together. And
Yeah.
those were the very fun days to remember.
That's awesome. Okay, and so now let's catch people back up. Okay, so you started your career after graduation at IBM. You're doing really well working as the wiring guy to come up with a lot of the rules for how these things were going. And you're starting to have this desire to want to pursue something beyond just the individual contributor technical role. And yet you find yourself bumping up against this invisible glass ceiling, if you will, for some of the things. Let's talk a little bit about that. And then what started you even thinking, maybe IBM is not where I want to stay? Can we catch up on those things?
Actually, that was the only time in my life that I felt there was a glass ceiling. I started working. I was doing well. I have colleagues. We work together. We build new designs. And I got a roommate, office mate, and he came in from graduate school. I think IBM shipped him out to study and then brought him back. Uh, at that time, there were rumors that they kind of decide who is going to be on the fast track, who's going to become a manager in the future. So they send them to school and they bring them back, and then so they can put them in the right track. None of us knew for sure, but my friend Paul came back, and I was more senior already in the department. I had more contribution. I was the leader of the project, and my boss liked me. I was getting promoted. I really wanted to be a manager. I don't know why. I just wanted to. I want to be the top of the company. And so one day, my boss called everybody together, says, we're going to have a new group, and then me and Paul is going to be your manager. So I was kind of shocked. I came home and talked to Anne. I said, I'm just shocked. I think they passed me by without even talking to me. So that's why I started thinking maybe I should look for other opportunities. Maybe this company is just too much blue collar, too traditional, too much into whatever they believe in, finding the people they wanted to, and maybe ethnically I was just not a good fit. But that was the only thing ever happened to me. I feel like being passed down. The rest of my life, nobody ever did that to me.
And yet that also propelled you forward, because although it was like, wait a minute, this isn't fair. Is there something else going on here? Because clearly it's not just merit that this decision is being by. Maybe there's something else. And yet that while you didn't get that promotion, that then provided the opportunity that when some other opportunity came onto your radar, you thought, well, maybe so. Maybe I'll go. And this is the thing. Sometimes, you can be inside a really great company. It can be amazing for the chapter that you're there. And yet, if you start feeling like maybe I'm made for more, maybe there's something else out there for me, I don't understand why or how I didn't have this opportunity I wanted. And yet then something comes on your radar, and then it gives you the ability to launch beyond what you had originally expected. Okay, so this happens to you, didn't get this promotion. This guy, Paul, less experienced than you, does get it. And then what was that opportunity that then came on your radar, and how did you decide?
We're in the middle of Poughkeepsie. Poughkeepsie, New York, along the Hudson River, has nothing around there. It's just IBM by itself. So there are no opportunities at that time. This is so different than what we have now in Silicon Valley. There's hundreds and thousands of opportunities, and they're all here. So nobody leaves IBM, mother IBM. As it turned out, it was one guy that used to work with me. He was my senior. He was my mentor, Charles Allen Pease. He graduated from Princeton before. He was on the wrestling team. I just admired the guy. I mean, he taught me a lot of things. He left there to join a company back in the West Coast, in the San Jose area. And then one day we just got a letter from him. He says, I want to invite you to come look this opportunity in California. It's sunshine, it's beautiful, and you should bring Anne and the little one, and he gave us 3 first-class tickets. I think they kind of refuge you to find the right person. I just happened to have the right background, the right experience in that field. Also, Alan trusts me because I worked for him before. He was my senior. So they spent the money, invited us. We've never been a first-class ticket coast to coast. So we flew out to California for the job, and everything was fine then. So we took the job.
Yeah. And everything was looking amazing until...
Yeah, it was amazing. We came out, and then I joined the company, and then I get my job. 8 months later, company went in bankruptcy. They ran out of money. So shock. I have a month of salary to last us, and after that we'll be starving. We don't have a job. So fortunately, I was in a field, I guess, That was in the embryonic, the early days, formative of the days of Silicon Valley. I think there were several startups that were interested in what I was doing. So I got 3, 4 offers. So I decided to join this little startup. It's called Amdahl Corporation. Dr. Amdahl was IBM's scholar and a fellow who was the architect of the IBM 360 system. He's the chief architect for the entire system. The feature of the system is that it's compatible across many different machines. So it makes it very interchangeable and they can all go online. So he designed that system and left IBM and because he was unhappy. So he started his company, Amdahl Corporation, and then they came to our little company. They hence cherry-picked the engineer they need from this little company called MassCore to Amdahl. And they picked me as one of the engineers to join. So I started there as a young engineer at day one as one of the founders.
And then that ended up being a pivotal and amazing experience because you started as an engineer. And then after some time, you were given that opportunity to start doing this management that you had wanted. And then what happened?
I was there maybe for a year or two as a design engineer. We were designing the fastest computer, LSA semiconductor circuits in the world. We wanted to compete with IBM. I had a boss, Fred Bulow. I was his protege. He likes me a lot. He's kind of a scholar and a professor. He doesn't really like to manage that much. So a lot of time he would just go into his room, close the door, and design. And if there's a lot of things going on in the company that needs to be managed, and Fred started training me to be a manager. And one day he called me in. He says, "Lin, you're going to be a first-line manager. Now here's 3 requisitions. You can hire 1 technician and 2 engineers." I was so delighted. So I took the job right away. That was my first management job.
Yeah. And then it worked quite beautifully for you. And then you kept having more and more opportunities. And then I don't know what happened because, is there going to be another book? Because there's a lot of years still to catch up from then to now.
Yeah, there is a book 2, a volume 2. The first book covered me through Amdahl. And
Yeah.
then I was in 1978. I went back to see my mother, and then we got a reunion. So I thought it could stop. The book 2 is start from there until end of my career. It's been audit taped, but I haven't written it yet. And I'm
Okay.
back, so it's very slow. I don't know how long it's going to take me to do that. But yeah, that's why I have been. There's 2 volumes there.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Okay, let's tease it a little bit because at the very beginning of the book, reading part of the foreword written by your son, David, he talks about how amazing you are and how such a great storyteller you had been. And he also said something like in his 4 retirements. And I was like, wait, what? 4 retirements? I just got to the good part where, yes, David beat Goliath. Amdahl made the computer that was very successful. And that's awesome. And yes, you went and were able to see your mother in China. But then quickly give the overview of, and then what happened? Like, what's going to come in volume 2? Because
the Amdahl lasts about 8 to 10 years. By then, I was director of the technology division, and I was being sought after at that time for many, many big jobs. And I want to be a vice president. I was a director. I want to be a vice president in charge of all development. So there were several companies that looked for me. And then I was recruited by STC, which is storage technology. They were in Boulder, Colorado. They were competing with IBM as an add-on, just drives, tape, printer. They don't have add-on CPU. And Jesse wanted to start a CPU business. So he started, along with Fred Bulow, computer division from scratch. And Fred decided I really should be the guy that runs the overall development operation. That would include the software development, which isn't a lot, that's IBM compatible, but all the hardware design, all the semiconductor, all the computer design tool. It was a huge job. And I took the job. And then we did well. But 3 years later, the company ran out of money because SEC ran out of money. They went into bankruptcy. The project put on a halt and stopped. The project never got finished, even though we built the computer prototype already. That was my first retirement involuntarily. And I was really devastated because, it was just really bad experience. It was such a huge job. And then, so I incubated for a while, then come back and started funding my own company, which is called Integrated CMOS. And we were building a industry data arrays to sell to different kind of a computer company to custom design their computer. For example, one of the big computer companies called Apollo here in Boston, and they would come and buy 4 different chips from us. Big chips, big, I mean, in terms of density, not the size. 4 of them, which nowadays all 4 could go into a microprocessor. But at the time, 4 chips is a lot of integration, a lot of density in there. My company would do those design, and we would sell to Apollo. And the company was quite successful. And in 1991, we were acquired by Toshiba, Japan. I had built over the years a big relationship with the Japanese companies. So it was a good acquire. All the venture capital people get to exit, and the company become eventually under Toshiba. So it was a good sale. And after that, I retired. And I really didn't want to work that much anymore because I was pretty burned out. Also, I want to take a break. So I decided to take up ballroom dancing with Anne.
Oh, wow.
So we started doing ballroom lessons, and we become pretty good ballroom dancers. Later on, when we go on cruises, we're one of the best couples on the ship. But in Silicon Valley, we're not. The young people are much better. We're not competitive, but we're good. So we started enjoying that. That was my second retirement. And then I come back and started working for Tandem Compact Hewlett Packard. It's a series of buyout. Every 4 years, we got buyout out by a new company. And then I end up as a vice president of technology at Hewlett Packard. But then Hewlett Packard had had their own vice president of technology. And they said, we don't really need another vice president of technology. So I became a vice president of sales. I was shipped to Asia Pacific, managing sales in Shanghai, Tokyo, and Korea. I was managing 16 countries over there for sales of mainframe computers. So we lived and I moved to Shanghai. I lived there for about 4 years. That was my last job. After that, I retired again for good. But it was in my early 60s. But then quickly I got bored again. So I started my own consulting business. I decided that I want to do something totally different. So I joined a water company, and then they do the water filter machines. So I wanted to start a new business for them in Asia Pacific. And so I wrote the business plans, I wrote the marketing plans, and the strategic partner plans. So I did that for a few years. And then finally I says, okay, I will retire. So that's 4 times.
And then you decide, when did the idea to write a book come up?
Much later. It was about 10, 12 years ago. We were on a cruise, and I was fully retired. I was in my 70s. And there were a memoir writing class. And the teacher says that I attended, teacher said, just start writing something interesting that you want to write about your life. So I started writing about the Broom shop.
Yeah.
And I gave the manuscript to a friend, a lady who was also in the 70s. She was a Caucasian English teacher. She read it. She told me, I couldn't go to dinner until I want to finish reading your book. It's so
Yeah.
interesting. Where's chapter 2? So I started reading chapter 2 and chapter 3. And later on, they come back and says, what happened before that when you were in China? So I started writing the beginning. So that's how it got started. And it lasts off and on for 10 years.
That's amazing. I loved it. I'm telling up way past my bedtime, almost like I was a teenager again, but just really enjoying all of the details that you put in sharing your story. I'd like to know, how do you define success now? Because you've had so many different successes, but for you, what is authentic success for you in this moment? How do you define that?
Well, it's getting what you set out to do, and so you get rewarded for being able to do it. So I'm a very focused person, and so I sort of like ignore other things. If I decide to do something I really wanted to do, I give a lot of my energy and enough to it. I guess that's what I define as success is, to do what I really wanted to do and achieve it at all costs. As long as within reasons, of course.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you again for all of your time and your wisdom and for sharing your journey. It's truly been an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you, Carolyn. That was wonderful. Thank you. Grateful.
I appreciate you.
Good luck, Carolyn.
Thank you so much, Lin. Again, thank you for your perseverance, your tenacity, your awesomeness. I'm just so appreciative and inspired, and I wish you amazing success, long, beautiful health, amazing continued family relationships.
Thank you.
Lin, thank you for sharing your story with such clarity and precision. Your journey shows not just the American dream, but how disciplined thinking, long-term focus, and intentional decisions compound over time. Thanks for listening to Your Next Success with Dr. Carolyn Sengel. Remember, authentic success is yours to define and includes aligning your career to support the life you want.